welcome to episode 7 of the One Life Church podcast. It's going to be a pretty fun day today. We're going to hang out with two of our friends, and right next to me, first of all, is our lead pastor, Bret Nicholson. Hi, Bret.
Hi, Sarah. Two of our friends and Bret.
Yeah. That's the way I introduce most people. Yeah. And then to his right is the executive director of Uncharted International, Ben Stewart.
Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And then at the opposite end of the table, we have the communications director from Uncharted International, Noah Gray.
Hi.
Yeah. And then, Ben, I was going to have you kind of start with just kind of tell us a little bit about who you are and, a little bit about Uncharted as well.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so Ben Stewart, and moved here from Colorado about 2.5 years ago with my family. So married to Kathy. We've been married for over 17 years now. We have 2 great kiddos. Eli's 14, Olivia's 12. And what brought us here was the opportunity with Uncharted. So I came as and continue to fill the role of executive director for Uncharted International. And it's been a really great, challenging, wonderful, rewarding just journey since coming here of really taking on what is Uncharted. Who are we? What are we about? What's our focus? What's our vision? What's our culture? And there's been a lot of exciting changes and new opportunities, as well as digging deeper with key things of who Uncharted's been in the past. And I'm happy to unpack that a little bit more, but it's been fun to grow the team, including bringing on this guy, Noah.
Yeah.
So.
And Noah, I mean, you've been around One Life for a while, and kind of known who Uncharted is, and being able to now work with Uncharted directly. Like, what's that experience been like? Kind of tell us a little bit about what you do at Uncharted.
Yeah, so I'm the communications director. I'm the analog of you at Uncharted.
Yeah.
So I deal with kind of anything going out externally and even internally when it comes to Uncharted communications. I do print material, do website, email, all that sort of stuff. And I've been on staff since August. Been around One Life since 2012 or so.
Worship leader at East.
I'm worship leader at East. Yeah, I started out as a sound guy, and now I'm a worship leader.
Right.
And
next step is pastor.
Yeah.
Well,
if only, right?
Hang on.
Ben knows me too well.
Okay. It was that much of an insult.
It was, I think, pastoring was number 4 on my spiritual gift survey.
Oh, is that
so
right?
I need to take it again.
Oh, okay.
I think that's wrong.
Yeah, well, so you're working your way there. That's right.
And I mean, even some of our projects, some of our films that we've created at One Life, I know Noah's been a part of those multiple times, holding a big boom mic kind of over people as they're talking. So it was always our expert audio person coming in. So I'm super nervous to have him here while I'm trying to mix a podcast
it all sounds
today
great.
as well. Thanks.
Sounds good.
I was hoping you would just say that, and then we'll just move on.
A little bit of confidence, and then we can move on. So,
yeah. And then Bret, obviously, I mean, you know kind of how Uncharted is kind of like a lot about Uncharted as well. Can you kind of give your background with Uncharted as well?
My background with Uncharted was, it started at the church that we were at prior to One Life, and it was originally founded by myself and a few others that we wanted to give the local church a way to do global missions, because I developed the conviction I was teaching through the book of Acts, and believe that all local churches, this is my personal conviction, I think I could back up a lot, should be engaged in global mission in some way, shape, or form. And so we said we're going to do that, and our thing was to reach least reached countries of the world. And so Uncharted, that's really fundamental to its task. It's always gone into places like Afghanistan and Myanmar and places like that are unreached and focused on that. And so that's where it all began, and we've just kind of journeyed from there.
Yeah. And for people that don't know anything about Uncharted, where can they find out more?
UnchartedInternational.org.
Yeah.
You can go to our Instagram, Facebook, the lobby of any One Life campus. There should be some stuff out.
Yeah, we have 3 campuses.
We do have 3
That's right,
campuses.
3 campuses and lots
3
of
lobbies.
There's a lot of wear, like the hat, and all that kind of stuff.
I mean,
swag, t-shirts,
cool hats,
that's right.
sweaters.
If you don't like Uncharted, their stuff looks pretty good. That's like the one with the flag. It doesn't actually say it.
When it says "Go boldly" too, it just people are like, "What does that mean?"
So, the "Go boldly" thing. Yeah, it's got its own
little
branding.
Feel a little bit more courageous when you put that on.
Absolutely.
So
Go boldly. That's something in the last year and a half.
Yeah. So about a year and a half ago, almost 2 full years now, we did a big rebrand that actually represented not just, a different logo and a different tagline, though it included that, but really just clarifying what is our vision and who are we as an organization. And like Bret said, I mean, the key really is in the name, this idea of uncharted, sort of the unknown places, and focusing on people who, some of the language we like to use, including unreached, is really just the forgotten and the overlooked. And the reality is there's still billions of people who do not have access to the gospel. And so we talk about there's like 2 key problems that we are trying to address. One is the greatest human injustice of all, which is the lack of access to the gospel. And so we're trying to respond to that injustice by helping in small ways bring the gospel access to people groups who are overlooked, who are unreached, who are forgotten. And then the other problem, if you will, is the imbalance of the mission work and the mission focus and the mission resources from the Western church to reaching unreached. And there's stats or realities like less than 0.5 cent of every dollar spent on mission goes towards reaching unreached people. Another way of saying it is
less than 0.5 cent.
Less than 0.5 cent. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that is very crazy.
Yep.
I didn't even know
and
that.
then 90% of all mission activity that comes from the West is in places that are already considered reached. So obviously the other way of saying that is only 10% of mission focus that comes from West is focused on unreached places. So I think one of the things that makes Uncharted unique is that focus on people who are forgotten, who are overlooked, and partnering with churches like One Life to address both of those problems, the injustice of lack of access and the imbalance. So Go Boldly was really birthed out of this idea of we need to be a movement of people who are living a bold faith, who are living a courageous faith in order to address those things.
Yeah, when we first brought in Ben, what was really cool is he took us through a process. He brought in someone else who took us through a process, rather, that dug into the history and the vibe of Uncharted. Mm-hmm. And the Go Boldly thing was what he responded to, looking at its history. It wasn't like we're trying to do this now and this is our new thing. It was more like this is what's authentic to what it's been since it started, and now you just build on that. Yep. So it was really, really rewarding and kind of going into those unknown places. So it was a fascinating process, and he's done a great job of just lifting that up into this is what we've always been. Let's just be more of that.
Yeah. And even on top of all of those things that you do, you also find some time to come teach here at our campuses sometimes. It was just awesome. And I know our team specifically, we love it when you come in, and we talked about this on Thursday, but it's like immediately when Ben comes in, he already feels like just part of the team, and we all just kind of start with this, normal conversation and getting things going. So, so this past Sunday you did teach here at One Life, and people can go listen to that, watch it at onelifechurch.org or on the One Life app. And then I was just going to ask you to kind of maybe give a little bit of an overview of a few of the things that you talked about, and maybe we can have some conversation around that as well.
For sure. Yeah. So I mean, this church, there's multiple partner churches of Uncharted, but One Life definitely has a very unique connection to me and to my family. This is our church home. This is our church family, and we're really happy about that. And we are blessed by that reality. So to preach here, there's layers of goodness for that, for me, for that, in that, it's a great partnership connection, absolutely, but it's also one way that I hope, as a member or participant of this family, I can serve and give back in that sense. So always a joy to do that. And yesterday, we were continuing the series of the table, and just how the table, as we've been talking about, is this representation of the family of God. And so trying to really point to this reality that certainly around the table there is, as the family of God, there's a place for care, there's a place for belonging, there's a place for spiritual transformation and growth, and things along those nature that are all right and healthy and necessary to be a functional family. And yet at the same time, it doesn't end there, that at the heart of discipleship is mission. And looking at Luke chapter 5, where we see Jesus's call of his first disciples, primarily or namely Simon, at the beginning of that chapter. And the first sentence of Jesus's call to Simon not only included just following him, but also engaging in the mission of his Father. And so we looked at Luke chapter 5, just kind of unpacking how Jesus illustrates what that mission looks like on a practical level, what it includes, some of the boundaries that Jesus broke through in order to go after people who are far from God, and then ultimately how that ends at a table scene, and really just this profoundly beautiful, rich, and pretty scandalous scene around a table where Jesus is hanging out with people that, by and large, the religious culture of that day thought he should not be, and what that teaches us about certainly the heart of God, but more specifically God's heart for people who are far from him. So that was sort of the overall view of what we chatted about yesterday at the service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking at Bret to see if he was going to say anything, but he didn't.
Oh,
we really planned a lot.
Nothing
Mary.
to say. I didn't prepare
no,
the
it's-
message.
No,
it's
did lead
I
worship
should've-
too. It
I
was
should have said
sort of like
amen.
this
Amen,
Uncharted duo leading yesterday.
We do that often, and then we never take advantage of the fact that you're preaching and I'm leading worship.
You guys never really talk about that, or
It's always like the last minute stuff.
We talk about it in like, hey, what are you talking about? It'd be great to to get the songs, but we never leverage some sort of global
you guys don't
mission
sit down
feel.
and like plan out some big emotionally tugging thing at the end.
Yeah,
no, we haven't done that. And emotionally,
Someday you might,
yeah. We'll think about that one.
That's right.
Okay, that's
Next time.
Yeah.
No, it was especially good in the sense that it kind of did give some new outlook on stories that many of, and you even mentioned this, that if you've been in a church context, you've heard the fishers of men thing. There's even a little song with the kids and all that. But I particularly remember and love this. You said there was a nuance in the word of you will catch men is more. It had to do with freedom or restoring of life. I think it was the language.
Exactly those two phrases. Yep.
I did remember that.
Yeah, good job.
Good.
That's
I
really
was paying
impressive.
attention. That's
I
right.
honestly didn't even remember that. So well done. That was really good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that and to reiterate what you just said, that for me was a really cool thing that I learned in preparing for the message, is growing up with that mentality of either a cutesy little, I'll make you fishers of men, or what I talked about yesterday, especially from the outside looking in. I think a lot of times when people hear Christianity, evangelicalism, God's mission, there can be a perception of conquest and, bait and hook and manipulate people in that sort of mentality. And one of the things that I learned in getting ready for yesterday is just the background of that word that Jesus used, specifically the word catch, goes all the way back to the story of Rahab in Joshua chapter 2. And so looking at that story, the word, the language around Rahab and her family of restoration and liberation, restoration and saving them out of, sort of this destruction that's coming, and freeing them and liberating them, and just what a much more beautiful description that gave me in understanding God's heart. And specifically in that passage, understanding Jesus's heart. Like, I'm calling you, Simon, now to be part of this movement that is, seeking to bring restoration to the things that are broken.
So if I was Peter or Andrew or one of those guys and I heard that language, I would have thought it would have evoked that imagery.
It would have connected you back all the way back to that story.
What book was that from?
I don't know, some commentary that I was reading.
Obviously a commentary.
I think it was a Daryl Bach commentary on Luke.
We get better commentaries or something, because I've heard that story a few times and have not heard that one. So I have a feeling I'm not alone though. It's
that was
not
the first time I really stumbled into that.
You think he's pretty solid?
I think he's a good guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. We can go with
And
it.
if we find out before I edit this, we can always edit that out.
That's right.
And then at the end, you read from a piece of paper. Now, I've had two people ask me, did you write that?
I did.
Oh, that is you.
Yeah.
Is that something we could share, like out?
For sure.
Online? Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
I knew you sent it to me, and I sent it to our connections director from Henderson. He was really excited about it. He also said he took 2 full pages of notes. So
Who's awesome?
Who took 2 full pages?
Josh.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
2 full pages?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's our
Why do
connections
you want to know,
director.
Brett?
Because I'm going to ask Josh directly.
How many pages do you-
What's your average page number? I'm going to find out how deep I am.
Is that like a pastor competition?
That's right.
You know, like
Yeah,
how
it
many,
is.
what's the average?
He's like,
people
dude, I'd
that-
take a Post-it note on you. Write down. Okay.
Bring up my
I don't know how I
phone.
stack up. Not that we're competing.
No. Yeah,
But we,
right. Yeah.
But it was, that's pretty interesting. So he was asking about that. And so kind of, where did that come from? Like, where did that, because that was a lot of content. It was amazing. And I think it set up kind of the rooms in a really great way to kind of respond to that. As you asked 2 questions, but so before we kind of go through those questions, but where did that kind of come from for you?
Really just, I was trying to think of a way to describe what the table looks like today, and referencing in my own mind's eye different scenes from literal tables that I've been around. And so, for example, there's one paragraph in there that talks about, this is not I don't remember how I say it, but basically this is not the table of fine china and hushed tones and sitting up proper and just, thinking about table scenarios I've been around where there's just such a fear, or at least tenuineness, I don't know if that's a word, but of how do I behave and how do I act and is it proper? And then also thinking, it's probably so. Like Bret, I think I can say this for you. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings geek and really just a huge C.S. Lewis Tolkien fan. And
I'm not the geek part.
And so I am totally the geek part. and I think one of the reasons I am, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons that I just love the richness of and the camaraderie that those stories share. And so when I was writing about what is the table like, it's this place where you can blurt out things that you've wanted to say, where elbows on the table are welcome and mistakes are received with grace. Just sort of that imagery of this group of messy people sitting around, and yet this is the sort of environment and atmosphere and family that God envisioned, and that is really reflective in that Luke chapter 5 passage of Jesus sitting around the table. It was a messy table, and yet you can I at least just envision how much laughter and joy must have been in Jesus's eyes and even coming out of him as he was sitting around that table. So I think that was behind a lot of the description, and then trying to take on some of the reality of Christians at large today. Do right or wrong, there is this perception of us being separatists and isolationists and elite, and really just trying to dispel that and say, no, this is the table for anyone and everyone, and that the only requirement, I think I say at one point, is repentance. So trying to
it would probably be a great question, even a topic for even another day. I don't know if we have time for this, but how do you, as a believer, that you have this worldview and you're trying to be faithful, what would Jesus have? How would he have handled all that stuff?
Yeah.
What everybody's all these crazy ideas floating around, and how did he respond to that, being faithful to his mission, but at the same time being faithful to love everybody? And it would be neat to have more data on that.
Yeah,
like
I
you
agree.
see a little bit of it, in his responses. He obviously told stories, and, but it would be a great discussion to think, how does that work without just kind of falling into the stream of what everybody else is saying? I know he didn't do that. He stayed with what he was.
That's right.
But at the same time, by the time he was done at Zacchaeus' table, the guy's like, hey, I'll sell everything I have. And I think, man, how do you learn to converse like that? That was pretty good stuff,
Well, and to muddy the waters more, because this certainly is not an answer, but it's something that has impacted me, again, as I was preparing for this, realizing, so I think one of the things I said at one of the services is that what we learned from Jesus is that mission does not necessarily have to compromise holiness, but that holiness can kill mission. And for me, that's like a very nerve-wracking thing to say, because that can be really twisted. That statement can become twisted. But to your point, what I see about Jesus sitting around that table with Levi and with the other tax collectors and sinners, as the Pharisees described them, is I don't know how, and that's your question. Right. I don't know how, but somehow Jesus was able to maintain his holiness. He was able to maintain his character, and in his case, his perfect righteousness. He was able to maintain his commitment to his Father, and yet still live out his mission in a very real way. Whereas what the Pharisees illustrate is this twisted commitment to holiness, to piety, to self-piety, which caused them to become separatists and elitists, and then killed their engagement in the Father's mission. Mm-hmm. So I'm not answering the question you're asking. I'm putting an exclamation point on it, saying,
an exclamation point. Great. Okay, good.
But to me, set up the right thing. That's like that's the Holy question. Is like how do you stay committed to holiness, realizing that engaging in the mission doesn't have to compromise holiness, but being aware that holiness, or a twisted version of it, what we would call separatism or self-piety or self-righteousness, can kill mission. Mm. So how do you live in between those two? Yeah,
I think Noah has the answer.
I think so.
That's
that's why he's on the podcast today.
There it is. That's why we've had him here today.
To solve the problem.
And it is the
and
answer.
Keep waiting and keep waiting. No, I don't have anything for you. I'm sorry, nothing.
Okay.
This is what I'm saying, that pastoring part.
Oh, okay.
It's number four.
Once you have that answer, you get to do it.
But I do think that's also an interesting thing, and you guys made it kind of a comment about it, and you guys made it a little bit of a joke, but I mean, as a worship leader, I mean, you guys kind of have an idea a little bit about what the message is going to be about. Like, what is that? Like, as you're putting together, I mean, leading people in a time of worship to set them up to kind of hear and respond to a message like that, what goes into that for you and your team?
I think it's different for every worship leader. And we joke. Ben and I do, when he's preaching, we do actually talk about it. Sometimes Ben's a little bit difficult to get to at times. And we have a lot of other things to talk about, like my job and things that we need to do on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, going into a worship set, I'm usually thinking and praying about, what the topic of the day is. The sermon series, thinking through different things. Maybe there are songs that can go into the few sets that we have during the sermon series, and continuing them out if we need to introduce some stuff, repeating things, my own team skill. But when it comes to the topic, I'll usually put together a few extra songs than I need, and then I can pull back from there. But I'm trying to, I think, get to at least some point of where I can point to the topic, but it doesn't have to be a completely straight line. Mm-hmm. I think Ben gave me a really good, I don't know if I've told you this. Ben gave me a really good example of this one time, or an encouragement, and I was having trouble just trying to figure out. Don't do that. The microphone. I was having trouble figuring out where to go for a worship set that he was preaching on, and he said, just make it a great worshipful experience, and that will lead to this. That will set up appropriately for this. And so it kind of helped relieve some of the pressure of, this worship set has to go directly with the message. And sometimes it doesn't always work that way. And but sometimes you can pull things in. If we're talking global, songs like Let It Echo work really, really well. Right. And so we pulled that in yesterday. And the song that we've done a few times now, we did it again yesterday. It was called Valentine. Again, just very, the world is yours. There are some of the lyrics of the song, just this full, beautiful song, but that kind of point to this global mission. And if we can pull it in, that's great. If we can't, then we'll just try and make it a really good worshipful experience to flow through. So.
Yeah, I've watched the pendulum swing over the years. Like we've gone back and forth, and you got to be you really got to be strong on theming and have this very evident thread thing. And we've tried that. And that there comes this moment where you're like, it's really hard to do because you feel like you're forcing it sometimes, especially with some worship songs. Yeah. But then sometimes you swing the other way, and it's like, that had nothing to do with anything we even talked about.
Yeah, and topics and styles of worship music change.
Right.
And so if you start swinging one direction hard into, we're going to theme everything, but everything that we want to theme was a topic of worship 7 years ago, you can resurrect these songs that we've done 7 years ago, but it kind of changes the feel and the tone of where you're wanting to go as a worship team, where worship music is already going. But ultimately, worship is going to point to the gospel, is going to point to Jesus Christ, is going to point to the message in some way. So the pressure of having to theme everything.
That's it. Yeah.
It's why Christmas is a really difficult.
Yeah, we won't be able to talk about that because that would disillusion too many people. The problem that worship leaders have with Christmas
from a worship perspective, from a worship song perspective.
But I can say this, since there is a worship leader at the table, I have to say that having done both, believe it or not, I was a worship leader at one time. I was actually the worship pastor at a church.
What?
And that's right. Little notes.
I need footage.
Oh yeah, the mullet, the whole thing. But
resume.
no, it's
Mullet.
I
Screenshot didn't
You're
happen.
gonna bring you
okay.
up to speed,
Please.
No, I having done both worship leading and preaching, I at the time when I was doing both, I thought of worship leading as more difficult. It was the greater challenge, and the main reason is because there's so much going on. You're packing around not just your own stuff, but the band and the click in your ear and the audience, and you're doing it's like a three act circus kind of thing is going on, and it really is. So I don't think people realize that.
Yeah.
So it's my way of appreciating and
thank
all
you.
that you represent.
There's a lot that goes into it, and I think I've said this a lot. I don't know what this says about me, but I've said this a lot over the last year or 2 years. When I got into leading worship and leading a team, I had no idea how much it was. I mean, you're carrying, like you said, you're carrying your team, and you're thinking about them, not only their gifts and abilities, but the things that are going on in their lives. And this whole series was about the table, and so when we get together as a team, I think of that as my family. I think about it from the table's perspective. So I hopefully know what's going on in my team members' lives, but I'm also trying to pray and hear from the Holy Spirit about where, the people in the seats are, and what songs might kind of lead people in a direction to be more receptive to what's going to be said later. It's really challenging. I think that preaching would be way more challenging.
We'll trade again.
No,
let's just see what you
again.
Well, for preaching, the advantage you have is you can you sink or swim kind of on your own a little bit.
Right. You don't have five
like
other
it did
people
happen
that
at the
have to
9
all
o'clock.
come in at
It was
the same
fully
time.
acknowledged by the worship team that there was a big time stumble that happened that almost became a train wreck. But that's just it. I mean, you can be cruising along and something wrong happens where things are off key or whatever else, and it's all tanking, and you're not just there by yourself. You're there with a whole group of people that are all panicking.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, also at the 9 o'clock, I went a solid 7 minutes long.
No,
and that was
nine minutes long.
So
let's
that
be clear.
100%.
9 minutes long.
I was service leader at
there
the
was
other
no
campus.
4 or 5 other people standing. So
That's why we're also having this podcast. This is Ben's farewell tour, because he'll never be allowed back again.
Thank you.
9 minutes was too far.
Thank you, Tri-State area. It's been real.
The band was standing backstage.
Sending me back to Colorado.
Yeah.
The band is standing backstage, and we're going, okay, we're going to do 3 repeats of the bridge and 3 repeats of the chorus, and then we're like, okay, no, we're going to go 3 and 2, and it's 2 and 2, and then I'm texting our director, and I'm like, are we going to do it at all? Do we just need to cut it?
And I was supposed to follow you. I was wondering too. Are we doing the song? What's it going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
I looked at the clock. It has this big red
so much
numbers.
goodness. So much juicy goodness.
There's a monitor that has red numbers.
Yeah,
and
that
Ben
should
was
have been your
ignoring
I
it.
saw them,
But-
but they were just.
But let me just give a little behind the curtain. On Thursday, when we do a kind of like a pre-recording,
Yep.
just in case our internet would drop, and we've talked about that on the podcast before. It's not a big secret, but the timer didn't work, and so Ben went about 34 minutes, and your target was 28.
Like 20 to 30.
Yeah, and he said, he goes, I'll get it down to 29, 30, no problem.
Oh, whittle
So
that
they-
thing. That's
37.
good.
Let it be
It's
known,
awesome.
though, I did cut a whole 2 minutes by the time I gave it the last time. So
Well, see, that's
I
why
mean,
Josh had
there's
2 pages of
improvement.
notes.
Yeah.
There was so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Went on and on.
The
I better
second
turn the
page.
page.
That's
The
right.
second page was the extra
I could
9
get 2
minutes.
pages if I went, 50 minutes or whatever you did.
Well, as we have kind of talked about worship, it's a good opportunity to talk about an event that Uncharted is presenting coming up. Actually, it's going to be at one of our One Life campuses at our East Campus. But Noah or Ben, either one of you kind of talk about Collective Night and the idea behind it, what kind of why you guys thought it was important and what the purpose behind it is.
Yeah. So, like Sarah said, the event is called the Collective Night. It's on November 9th. Doors and food trucks. So getting people in the door with food is probably the most important thing. It starts at 5. The event starts at 6:30. And the idea behind it is just a night of shared worship and prayer amongst churches of Evansville, across the whole city of Evansville, kind of bridging the gap, bringing people together. Excuse me. Bridging the gap, bringing people together that wouldn't normally worship together just because you go to a different church. And we felt it was really important because we have 4 strategic priorities, also can be called values, and one of them is following the lead of the Holy Spirit. So this year, Ben set forth that one of the things we wanted to do is host 4 prayer and worship gatherings throughout the year, once each quarter. And the idea just being like, there really is no way to quantify or to track, are you following the lead of the Holy Spirit? What number can you put down? Well, you can't really do that. But what you can do is you can set aside a time to actually do that with a group of people. And so we've had a couple of smaller worship events and prayer events, and this is the larger version of that. So that's kind of the idea behind the event. We've got people from One Life and City Church and Crossroads in Evansville, and some people from our partner church out in Montana coming in to lead worship and to join this night with us. And
So the Montana group is actually doing the leading, right? They're the ones leading worship. Is that true?
They will be leading. They have a section of, I think, 3 songs. They're going to be leading just them. And then we've got a few worship leaders from churches across the city that will be.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So it's almost like there's two different worship teams, if you will.
Really?
Yeah.
Between that and food trucks, I'm
I'm be there.
now.
And then
I didn't know before this.
And then now that actually sounds cool.
And then that's right.
One Life's own Thomas Bernardin is producing a film for the event.
Right. Yep.
Right.
And I think he's got some really cool ideas from what I've seen. And the script is Emily Luttrell, our communications assistant, wrote the script. It's really great.
Really good.
So this, for people around One Life, imagine this to be kind of a because type event. Just add a few more churches in with that. And we're really excited. We had to move it back a little bit. It was originally in September, and then we got really close to September, and we're feeling it a little bit. So we decided to move it back to November, and we're excited.
I think it's a really important symbolic event for Uncharted. I think it's a really important event for a lot of reasons, but historically, Uncharted, all of our big events were kind of centered around fundraising and some sort of really significant and important humanitarian effort or injustice that we were trying to respond to, and those were really great to have as part of the Uncharted sort of history and life. But this year really represents so much change for Uncharted, and a lot of just really becoming more clear about this is who we are, this is where we're going, this is what it means to be part of this movement of Uncharted. And so in light of that, we want to sort of indefinitely suspend when we gather together, it being about fundraising or issues or topics. Not that any of those are bad, but really elevate that in order for us to actually do what we're hoping to do and go into the types of places, both from a vision standpoint, but also at a literal standpoint, just the complete and utter dependence we have on the Spirit. And so for us, that's why it was important to say, at least for 2018, anytime we gather together, whether it's 5 people or 500 people, our sole focus is going to be on the person of Jesus Christ. And creating time as an organization, saying as an organization, we are going to intentionally pause and position ourselves and posture ourselves to just listen and to just worship. And so most of those have been very intimate and very internal and very small. And this is sort of the culmination of that. And basically just reaching out and saying, hey, anybody that's connected to Uncharted at a really intimate, formal level, like a One Life church, all the way down to a more loose, hey, you're a friend of mine who loves Jesus, come on out to this night type of thing. This is for us a very symbolic. So even though it's hosted by Uncharted and represents something super important to us, it really is, like Noah said, just an opportunity for people who love Jesus in this community, who are connected to Uncharted in some way, shape, or form, to come together and worship him. So it's, for me, I'm really excited about it for what it symbolizes for us as an organization and a movement. So, yeah. and there's food trucks,
And there's food
which
trucks.
you can't.
And we really appreciate, One Life has been super supportive of this from the beginning since we started talking about it. And then when we had to move the date and move the location, One Life East was the location that we came to, and super gracious in even offering that up and offering.
Where was it originally?
We had some.
We were going to do it in a warehouse in downtown Evansville, which would have been really cool, but
It would be really.
it wasn't.
It
It wasn't
was
climate
super
controlled. So in the end of September, the chances were it would have worked well, but November we're not really sure.
Okay.
So
It would have been a
I
little.
did not know that.
Especially, I'm really thankful now because October has been really cold.
right, exactly.
So
It's probably going to
November-
be snowing in November, and then
Right.
But
90
even
in January.
throwing in to help us out with the film and this, it's just been wonderful. It's been great to for the organizations to connect on this level and in this way. It's been cool.
And we are one church in 3 locations. And so we talk about Evansville. We have 2 locations in Evansville, and we have a location in Henderson. So obviously anyone around the tri-state is invited to come to this.
right.
It's not just an Evansville
Absolutely.
event. And so I think that's always fun to make sure like we get, it's pretty cool to get a lot of people in one location. I really am excited about that, to even meet people that are part of, the larger church body of our tri-state area, and just be able to say hello, and stay in the same room and respond with them. So I'm excited about
Absolutely.
it.
It's
Yeah.
all right. And if Sarah's excited, well,
It's gonna be good.
That's right. It's going to be a win.
Wow, guys, these always fly by. I feel like we just get started and then things.
That's how Ben felt in his message yesterday.
right.
It's like
I was
9 minutes
Just
over.
flying
I
by.
had just finished my
For all
intro
this-
when I realized I had 2 minutes
It's
left.
just flying
So-
by, and the worship team is backstage going, I don't know.
editing the song. It's great.
Yeah, the other campuses were pretty excited too.
I'm sure.
I was at West, and I walked up on stage.
Pretty
and
excited.
I had
That's code for
no
ticked
time.
off.
It was amazing. But no, we still
Sorry,
had,
Sarah.
Bye.
But I
Sorry.
will say no, and I think it's important. The 2 questions that you asked at the end was,
Right.
who can you invite to the table, and it was how are you?
Yeah,
gonna do
what does that look
What does
like?
that look like?
Yeah.
And we had and I think it's important to give everyone feedback. Was that we had a lot of those cards turned in at every
Cool.
campus.
Yeah, I
it was
noticed
really
that.
great.
It's really cool. You never know how response times are going to go. I know sometimes you try stuff and it doesn't work, and sometimes it goes great. And even having people literally move to go do that at East, I'm standing on stage leading worship, and I'm watching people actually leave their seats, go lay down
Yeah.
the cards. And
really
it was a very cool thing to watch, cool thing to see, even while worship and music is going on.
That's
it-
awesome.
And it's not one of those things that we just say. It really, like Matt Breivogel, one of our campus pastors and creative arts director, he texted our group this morning and said he went over to West, picked up the cards, and started praying for them. So
Wow.
we really mean that when we say we're going to pray
That's
over
so great.
every single
Yeah.
one of those cards and continue that. So we do kind of close our podcast usually with a question for Bret, but I think we can open this up to everybody today.
Oh boy.
Be kind
Really?
of fun.
'Cause I
Yeah.
don't know the question.
Yeah.
No time to prepare.
Yeah, that's right. Just
We do have
flying off the
one
cuff.
that I'm going to keep on hold from Gary for another time. But
what, who was that again?
Gary,
Oh, okay.
Gary Snodgrass is his
Ah.
name.
Mr.
So,
Snodgrass.
Yeah.
Seems
I've
like
heard of him.
seems like a suspicious name for some reason.
Well, we'll find out someday.
Okay.
I think it's just going to be that thing I always say. We'll have a question from Gary.
Right.
We'll have it later. Okay, so let's see. This is a question from our friend Kyle. Kyle sent us a few. So anybody that wants to send a question to the podcast, you can do that at podcast@onelifechurch.org. And so the question is, what is your most dreaded holiday or time of year?
Oh,
It's kind of negative.
most dreaded.
Yeah. One you don't.
Dreaded.
Maybe we shouldn't say
holiday
dreaded,
or
but
time
one
of
that
year.
you don't enjoy.
Least favorite holiday.
Least favorite.
Least
So, man, that's.
It depends on
give me a lot of.
context. Again, well, my least favorite holiday is Halloween. I've never really been a huge fan. I dressed up as a kid, but I've never really been a fan of, spooky and haunted houses and all that.
Right.
As a worship leader, Christmas is tough. I love Christmas
come back to that.
personally, but man,
Yeah.
it's a challenge. It's a
think-
rewarding challenge.
A
There
rewarding
you go.
challenge.
There you
Way to
go.
go. He gets to
That's
keep his job, even though he volunteered.
My completely paid job.
yeah, that's right. I think if that was my gut reaction. This sounds horrible to say, but it's a both and with the Christmas season, because I love the concept and I love memories that I've had from Christmas. but the lead up to it all and the obligations to it all and the pressure of it all, and there's a lot that goes on in the church world, and there's a lot that goes on in the personal life. There's a lot of money spent. There's a lot of, and we have big family things come over to our house, and and I love it. Like once I'm in it, but the getting in there is, I do kind of dread it. It's like, here it comes, and sometimes you wish you could just kind of bail out, which is a terrible thing to say. If you're not a Christmas fan, that sounds horrible.
I remember in pastoral ministry, it was tough. Yeah. And when I started off in ministry, I was the youth pastor, and inevitably you always get the short straw at Christmas time. So the youth pastor is always the guy who's like doing the sermon, the Sunday service where like two people show up.
Oh, the one between Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, exactly.
That one, the least attended Sunday of the year.
The senior pastor comes up and is like, hey, this is a great opportunity for growth for your son. Which really means I'm leaving. I'm going on vacation, and you get so. Anyways, but my answer would be this makes me sound like a terrible husband, but I can say it because I know my wife would say the same thing. But Valentine's Day is my least favorite holiday, and mostly because my wife and I have tried to celebrate it well by doing the whole go out on a date thing, and inevitably we end up in a fight because we can't figure out where to go because everything's packed and nobody's actually in a good mood at all, and so we just end up crabby together. So we've just started skipping Valentine's altogether. And
you skip it altogether?
Yeah, just
you were able to pull that off?
We don't go out. We don't
float that with my wife. Here's my plan for the year.
I
skip it too every year.
Me too.
Why do you say that, Sarah?
I understand.
Every year to skip that thing right over.
You're like, what day is it? It doesn't matter.
That's right. It's funny at my other church when I didn't know that about the Christmas New Year Sunday,
right?
And they asked me to preach,
right? Yeah, it's not an honor.
Never been asked to preach
not
before,
an honor.
and I was blown away.
No.
I gave heart and soul to that. I was so honored.
Yeah,
and I had my whole family, extended family, took up a row, and there were like 8 other people in a 1,500 seat auditorium. But I did.
But now, are you thinking about who you're going to ask?
Absolutely, to deceive them into thinking it's an honor.
That's right.
His name is Ben,
and I realized,
no, I know. I've
already
figured
been there.
it out.
Really, it was. And then later, I started working. I thought, wait a minute, they dumped that on me. They would honor me. So it does happen. It goes on in the church world. But
awesome.
There you go.
Well, guys, thanks so much for coming and hang out with us today. And it's always more like I really always enjoy hearing more about Uncharted because I know that we're a partner, but it's always good to hear more of that and kind of hear what you guys are doing and directly from you and being able to continue connecting about that. And people can go to collectivenight.com for information of Collective Night and UnchartedInternational.org for more information about Uncharted. And so thank you guys for joining us this week.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Great.
Super thankful for One Life and you guys and your partnership and friendship.
Definitely.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely. Friendship. Did you guys hear that? We got
That's
it.
Right.
And this Sunday at One Life, we are celebrating baptisms, which is going to be pretty exciting. So, guys, can't wait to join celebrating and hearing stories of life change with you this Sunday. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the One Life Church Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Inman. The One Life Church Podcast is produced by me and Thomas Bernardin. Music by Ben Brock and Micah Robertson. To find out more about One Life Church, you can visit onelifechurch.org. Or to contact us directly at the podcast, just email us at podcast@onelifechurch.org.